Choice. Choice is really a blessing in my opinion. I'm one of those people who doesn't get hung up over things like Xbox versus PlayStation, Marvel versus DC, BMW M versus AMG. I rather enjoy the entire spectrum. But sometimes when you have, for example, the poster boy for Save the Manuals, which was the previous Cayman GT4, and now the 718 gets the softer option of the PDK, it's inevitable that something like this will come under fire by the purists who believe that the manual is the only way. But to have that type of mindset is to ignore the benefits that one can get from a different point of view. Porsche's GT department are becoming more and more versatile with what they offer their customers. We've got the new GT3 also available in either PDK or manual, with a touring with, again, a PDK option that it hasn't had before. And in this 718 series, we've got the GT4 with PDK and manual, today us testing the PDK, and indeed the Spider sharing now the exact same internals as the GT4 for the first time. So much choice for the Porsche GT customer. However, I do accept that the manual GT4 is one of the most exciting cars that you can ever drive. So will the PDK really dumb down the experience, or will we discover something quite brilliant about this car? Today we're going to explore every change from the last gen to this one, because there is a huge amount of changes, even if it doesn't look it, and then we'll drive this car and find out just how exciting the PDK 718 GT4 can be. So guys, before I start, you'll be super pleased to know that car launches and international press trips are starting up once again with travel opening. And today's sponsor, which is NordVPN, they're a returning sponsor, are a huge help to me when I'm abroad, not just for work, but for relaxation purposes as well. What is NordVPN? Essentially, you turn on the VPN, which is a simple click. As you can see, that's connected now. Now, for example, when I last went abroad to Pakistan, my Instagram lost the ability to do reels, as you can see here. But with Nord turned on, it still thinks I'm in the UK, so you don't lose features on apps, which is super important, especially for someone on social media. Secondly, you don't lose your library of videos and films in Netflix, etc., which again is all region locked. And then you've got the usual stuff with VPNs, like protecting your data, keeping you anonymous online. All of that is true as well, keeping your credit card information safe. It's really so key for me when I travel now. It's on every single device I have. For you guys, I have a special offer, which you can see right here. Avail it. Please do support our sponsors. Thanks again to Nord. Let's jump into the episode. So guys, welcome back to RBR. Let's discuss, firstly, what's changed between the 718 GT4 and the previous Cayman GT4. Because on the outside, it really doesn't look like a lot has changed, does it? A bit of a nip and tuck in design. On the rear, I accept it's a lot more different than the previous version. But generally speaking, it seems to be the same kind of horsepower, same kind of figures, etc., etc. But in truth, a lot has changed. Let's start firstly with the new bespoke engine unit on this mid-engine car. Now, this new unit is not the 3.8 that we had before. This is based on the 992 turbo engine, the 3-litre being used in the current 992 Carrera series. However, this is without the turbos, of course, because this is a natural engine. And it's been bored out further to 4 litres. And despite the size and the stroke, this has no relation to our GT3 engine. It is a bespoke unit for the GT4, the Spider, and now the GTS cars. Now in this PDK version, this engine gives us 414 brake horsepower, slightly more torque at 430 Newton meters, but it does add 30 kg weight penalty because of the PDK. However, as we saw with the GTS with PDK being as fast as the manual GT4, the 0 to 60 time is much improved in this PDK version. It's finally under 4 seconds at 3.9, but a spoiler, it is a lot faster in practice. Wait for me to do the launch control later on in the video. Now the PDK brings other changes as well. Firstly, it's 7-speed versus the 6-speed manual. The manual itself was notorious for having super long first and second gears. You could reach 85 miles per hour on second gear, which means that you're not enjoying it as much daily, you're not enjoying the shifting experience as much, and it was one of the few things put against that car. Whereas here, we've got 7 speeds, we're shifting more. On the motorway at 70 miles an hour, you're doing about 500 RPM less than the manual, so more breadth of ability than that car. Indeed, our mechanical rear locking differential is working hand in hand with the PDK with enhancements, which means that on traction and overrun mode, we're getting extra lock of 30 to 37% versus, I think, 20 to 27 in the previous one as well. So that means a positive effect on lateral dynamics and indeed more traction on the road, which is only a benefit for a car like this. Now, while the car looks really similar to the previous version, aerodynamics was a huge thing on this updated 718 GT4. We've got 50% more downforce versus the previous car, 122 kgs worth. The hero of this is the new diffuser design on the rear. It's not just for aesthetics, as it never is with Porsche, always a tool for a purpose. Here, we've got a special ducting that pushes air so fast through it that it's almost as if the car is being sucked onto the road. And you'll find this on both the GT4 and on the Spider. Secondly, we've got a larger rear wing on the GT4 now. This is 20% more downforce thanks to the larger rear wing. Our front end has been redesigned, to a more GT look, but again, to provide better aerodynamics. We've got a much larger front lip here where you'll see the GT4 is inscribed in there as well. We've got air curtains on the side as well. All of this helping to reduce front lift and improve the aerodynamics of the car. The car also has NACA ducts, as you'd see, for example, on the bonnet of a GT3 RS. However, on this version of the car, they are underneath the car and serve a similar purpose. As for the chassis, it's essentially a mid-engine version of the previous 991.2 GT3 chassis. So perhaps an even better version considering that it's mid-engine. The suspension shares components with the GT3 almost entirely as well. We've got a lightweight spring strut suspension on the front. The rear, we share control arms, ball joints, the subframe itself with that previous GT3. So a lot taken straight from that car, straight into this one, which is fantastic. This has got the PASM sport suspension as standard, so 30mm drop as you would expect. The brakes, again, the braking system, very similar to the previous GT3. The carbon ceramics on this are gigantic. Look at the size of these things. They are absolutely massive and look far too big for a car this size. 410mm on the front, 390 on the rear. Even the standard brakes, 380 on front and rear, look huge and undoubtedly work well. We're going to see what the carbon ceramics are like today. These, of course, 50% lighter. Now, this car is a whole 12 seconds quicker thanks to all these changes versus the previous version. We don't have a speed for the PDK. Undoubtedly, it's going to be quicker. I would guess something from 7 to 10 seconds, which is insane when you consider even the manual one as quick as a 997 GT3 RS on the ring. It's just mind-blowing. So that is the new 718 GT4. We're going to test the PDK in a second, but first, there is a further version of this car coming, which blows my mind considering the feedback I'm going to give you just on this car once we drive it. There is a GT4 RS coming, and it's going to be a rather special thing. The engine is said to produce further power, of course, up to 500 brake horsepower, but loads has been done seemingly on the aerodynamics and other components of the car. We'll have to wait and see exactly what has been done here. But for example, we have got NACA ducts on the top of the bonnet, as we saw on the GT3 RS. We've got a much larger and more aggressive front splitter. We've got changes to the air curtains on the corners that we can perceive. Like you have in GT3 and GT2 RS, we've got the air vents over the top of the wheel arches as well, undoubtedly finished in carbon fiber, but a big change on the rear as well. Here, we've got that same swan neck wing as you find on the new GT3. Undoubtedly larger in size and going to give a lot more downforce. Very similar looking rear diffuser, more exciting looking exhausts. We've got center locking wheels this time in a whole new design for the GT4 RS, which actually look quite spectacular. We've seen it going around the ring extremely fast. I can't wait to hear how quick this thing is. And I really quite like the alleged new orange that they're going to have on it as well. Now, that's not the end of the story in terms of the future for the small Porsche sports car. Porsche are allegedly making a EV Boxster concept. So they want to see, like they did with the Mission E and the Taycan, what the response is to an EV Boxster. I think it will look something like this. They plan to have it at a very similar price. They plan to sell it alongside the combustion version as well. Exciting times for the future, considering what a fantastic car the Taycan is. Now let's go inside, have a quick look at the small changes done on the interior, and then launch control this car and see, does the PDK really give the benefits that you would expect from a quicker shifting motorsport box? So guys, there's the big change in the PDK GT4. It's so weird to see that in a GT4. See GT4 written there. Of course, this is straight out of 991.2 GT3. What is this going to add? We will see later. Oh look, we've got paddles in the GT4 as well. So weird. But of course, this is the more motorsport derived version of the GT4, I suppose you could say. Really nicely spec'd here by Porsche GB. I like what you guys did, because when I spec'd one for myself, I did the exact same spec almost. I love the fact that you've got guards red within the interior trims, such a Porsche thing to do. They have replaced Alcantara with something called Race Tex, which is essentially exactly the same, but they say better wearing and more feeling. Still got your typical grabby handles. I love stuff like this in track cars. I think even if it's not necessary in terms of weight saving, which it probably is for Porsche, it adds a bit of flair and drama. One thing you cannot spec a GT4 without, assume you can fit into it and get comfortable, which I can, that's the carbon bucket seats. As we originally saw on the 918 Spider, as fantastic today as they were then, really add some flair, really keep you well placed within the interior. Don't push my shoulders out too forward as well. We've also got quite a few motorsport elements within the inside. We've got the fire extinguisher, the roll cage, which all come part of that package. But generally, you sit inside this, really just reminds you of something like the GT3 RS in a good way. That's even more the case when you turn the car on, because despite the rev limiter, OPF, etc., this still sounds bloody good. Have a listen to this. That is motorsport sound. We're limited to about exactly 5,000 revs, in fact. But I think it sounds fantastic. Right guys, let's go out now. Let's do a launch control. I can't wait to show you how quick this car is. So guys, let's talk about benefit one of PDK Porsche, and that is of course the crazy launch control. And GT4, I've done a few already, I can tell you, it is flipping quick. Let me show you right now. See on the race box there, 3.5 seconds. That is incredibly quick for a car of this class. I bet you my M2 CS will do nothing like that on a launch control. And the first thing you notice is the sound. How much does it sound like the GT3, GT3 RS, etc. that we've tested on the channel? It's that typical Porsche GT sound, and look how loud it is for what is a modern car. It's a 2021 car. And then you realise why then the new GT3 992 also sounds flipping amazing. Porsche have their ways. Now, a lot of it is coming within the cabin as opposed to being mega loud outside, but it's proper motorsport experience in terms of the sound. Yes, it's never going to be as amazing sounding as the Cayman GT4, but this is nice. This is as pleasurable as I remember the GT3 RS being. And that's so much of the experience of the GT car. If you compare it to the GTS that we drove, that had the same engine, if you remember, essentially unchanged from this, the exhaust system on that sounds nothing as exciting as this one does. And that difference between the GTS and the GT4 compounds in every single area of this car versus that one. Be it the steering, the rigidity, the incredible carbon ceramic brake feel, the turn in, the power out. This is proper Porsche GT experience. Oh, I miss these cars on our track here. What an absolute beast. I love my M2 CS, I do. I don't get the comparisons to GT4. GT4 is proper Porsche GT motorsport track car. That's not what the M2 CS is all about. It's got its own flavour. It is a proper mid-engine track car, and it's so flipping enjoyable. I cannot explain to you how good this car is, but then I have to explain it to you. So we break it down. As I said, the brakes paired with the incredible steering and turn-in and the race car-like rigidity of this, makes conquering any road an absolute breeze for this car. You pair that with the second benefit of the Porsche PDK is that it is a lightning fast gearbox. Watch this. Before this lever even goes back after I pushed it, the gear has changed. Watch this. And if I shift up, it is lightning fast, and I always only use that word for Porsche GT. Now, of course, one big criticism made of the manual version of this car is that you can get to about 70, 80 miles an hour on second gear. So you don't really derive all the pleasure of hitting the red line frequently in the manual. And that's less of an issue in the PDK because you're not looking to derive that pleasure when you do the gear shift. You get the immediate lightning fast shift, and that's just great on its own. Now, it's not too different here, the gearing. You know, second gear will get you up to about 60, 65 miles an hour, but then you're not looking for that gear shift as a point of pleasure in this car, whereas in the other one, you're really searching for it. This one, it reminds you of GT3 RS, it reminds you of GT2 RS, and undoubtedly in the future, GT4 RS. The handling in this car is second to none. The way it's sucked down to the ground with the brilliant 901.2 modified chassis, the amount of downforce we have, the turn-in, the way that the car is planted to the road, the traction that you gain out of this. If you've driven GT3 or any of the RS cars, this will remind you so much of that, particularly the engine, because you think, you know, hand me down from 992, fine, bored out, etc. It's going to be very similar to that. It's really not. Speed is absolutely mega on this. You assume going into 718 GT4 that it's going to be slower, it's not going to be as much of an experience as GT3 or GT3 RS. I promise you that's not the case with this car. It feels super quick, and a lot of that I think is helped by the fact that you get such wonderful sound out of this engine. Honestly speaking, it's one of the best cars I've ever driven this. I don't think the PDK is a point against it. I get that we have so much pleasure out of the manual gearbox. The frequency of use of it is a bit of a point against it, and there's so much fun to be derived out of the PDK at Porsche. I have never ever found another automatic box that behaves so much like a real GT4 or GT3 motorsport car, and yet maintains the balance of comfort when you're driving it slowly. I'm in love with this 718 GT4. I really want to buy one. I've tried to buy one. I've tried to buy a Spider. The wait lists are simply too long, which is such a shame. You think of the bang for buck that this car gives you, assuming you can actually buy one, because what you derive from the driving experience just blows your mind. So guys, I guess unsurprisingly, I've massively enjoyed this. To be fair, I did come into it thinking, am I going to enjoy it versus GT3 RS and GT2 RS? It's absolutely related to those cars. If you blindfolded yourself and look for those typical traits of incredible handling, great sound, and real motorsport engagement from a car, then the 718 GT4, especially in PDK, gives you that element. Can't wait to see what the GT4 RS is going to be like. That is going to be insane. I mean, just think about it. Building upon this base, how do you make this any better? I have no idea, but I sure as hell cannot wait to find out. So if you guys have enjoyed this, as always, please do like, subscribe, check out the other GT videos that we've done as well. I'll see you guys next time. Time for a couple of more laps.